Welcome to Campfire Stories.
Pull your chair a little closer. The fire's doing good work tonight, and this one deserves the warmth. Welcome back to Campfire Stories, everybody. I'm Marty Shepherd.
And I'm Carol, and I have been waiting all week for this one. Marty won't even tell me which story it is until we sit down, which is either very romantic or very annoying, and after 37 years, I still can't decide which.
It keeps the marriage interesting. Tonight we're going out to sea. The North Atlantic, to be exact, in the autumn of 1872, and if the ocean at any time of year has a personality, that time and that place would be the chapter where you start to worry. We're going to talk about a ship called the Mary Celeste.
I know that name. That name has been living in the back of my mind since I was about 12 years old and found a library book about unsolved mysteries. It sat on my nightstand for a week and I barely slept a wink.
She was a brigantine, 2 masts, about 100 feet of solid American hardwood, out of New York Harbor on the 7th of November. Her captain was a man named Benjamin Briggs. Benjamin Spooner Briggs, if you want the full weight of the name. He was known as a serious, careful, deeply religious man. Not the sort who takes unnecessary risks. Not the sort who panics.
Which means when something went wrong on that ship, it wasn't because someone was being foolish.
Exactly Carol's point, and it matters. Briggs brought his wife Sarah along. She loved the sea, spoke a little German, played the melodeon. And they brought their daughter Sophia, 2 years old. Little Sophia Matilda Briggs on her first ocean crossing. The Briggs family had an older son back home in Massachusetts. He stayed with his grandmother. And sometimes I think about that. That little boy on shore. The one who didn't go.
Oh, Marty. I didn't need that detail. I really didn't. Now I'm picturing a grandmother at a window?
The cargo was 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol denatured, meant for a winery in Genoa. The crew was 7 men, experienced hands. So altogether 10 souls aboard. And on the 7th of November, the Mary Celeste sailed out of New York Harbor into an autumn Atlantic, under a capable captain, in perfectly good trim, headed for Italy.
And we all know she never got there.
She never got there. On the 4th of December, a Canadian ship called the Dei Gracia was making the same crossing, a few days behind. Her first mate spotted something off the port bow, about 400 miles east of the Azores. A vessel under partial sail, moving strangely, yawing, as sailors say, as if no one had a hand on the wheel. Because no one did.
I get a chill every time I hear that. A ship just wandering.
They pulled alongside and hailed her. No answer. Sent a small boarding party over, and what they found was nothing. No crew. No captain. No Sarah. No little Sophia. The ship was wet between decks and her compass and chronometer were gone, and the single lifeboat was missing. But the cargo was intact. The personal belongings were still in the cabins. Mrs. Briggs's sewing kit. The captain's logbook, with the last entry dated 9 days earlier. A meal, some accounts say, still sitting on the table, though that detail has been argued about ever since.
What do you mean, argued about?
Well, the story grew in the telling over the years, as stories do. By the time it reached the newspapers, it had acquired half-eaten breakfasts and cups of warm tea and a cat asleep in the hold. Most of that was embellishment. What actually remained was more unsettling in its orderliness. The ship was not in disaster. She was just empty. Tiddly, inexplicably empty.
That's worse, isn't it? A disaster you can almost understand. But everything in its place and nobody home, that's the kind of thing that doesn't let you sleep.
The last log entry put the Mary Celeste near a small island called Santa Maria in the Azores. Whatever happened sometime after that. The boarding crew sailed her into Gibraltar, which promptly launched an inquiry, and here's where it gets interesting, because the inquiry was almost as strange as the ship. The salvage court was run by a man named Solly Flood, Attorney General of Gibraltar, and Solly Flood had decided before examining much of anything that the answer was mutiny. Possibly piracy. He was looking very hard at the crew of the Dei Gratia, the men who'd found her.
The people who rescued the ship were suspects?
For a while, yes. There were marks on the railing that Flood decided were sword cuts. A sword that was found aboard with a reddish stain. He was building a case. But the marks turned out to be wear and the stain was rust, and eventually the inquiry concluded there was no evidence of foul play, and Flood more or less refused to accept that, and continued to imply things anyway. Some men really do love a villain more than they love the truth.
That is the most human detail in this entire story, Marty, and I say that as someone currently sitting next to a man who once insisted for 45 minutes that we'd taken a wrong turn when I had the map right there in my hands.
The map was ambiguous. The theories over the years have not been ambiguous. They've been many and enthusiastic. Seaquake. Waterspout. Submarine volcanic eruption. The alcohol fumes building pressure below decks, a sound like an explosion with no actual fire. The crew taking to the lifeboat just long enough for the ship to drift away from them. That last one has some scientific backing, actually. Researchers have since run experiments suggesting exactly that could happen with denatured alcohol in a shifting sea.
But they would have been on the lifeboat together? All 10 of them. They would have had each other.
They would have. And then the rope connecting the lifeboat to the ship, if it parted in heavy weather, or was simply not secured well enough in the panic, they'd have had nothing. The Atlantic in early December is not a forgiving place for an open boat. And that's where they stay, all 10 of them. In the water somewhere between the Azores and the known world.
You know what I keep coming back to? Captain Briggs was careful. His wife chose to be there. Those weren't reckless people. They just ran out of ocean.
Now Carol and I are film people, and there is a film. 1935. Hammer Films, before Hammer was famous for horror. And Bela Lugosi, yes, that Bela Lugosi, Dracula himself, plays the villain aboard a fictionalized version of the story. It's called The Mystery of the Mary Celeste, and in it the mystery is emphatically solved, with a murder plot, which I suspect would have annoyed the actual historians considerably.
I watched it years ago. It's very Bela, very serious, very cape, even without a cape. But you're right, giving it an answer sort of misses the point of the whole thing, doesn't it?
That's always the temptation with a mystery. Somebody has to have done something. We need an agent, a villain, a reason, because the alternative is that 10 people, careful, experienced, loved by someone, simply ceased to be, and the sea kept no record of it. That is a harder thing to sit with than Bela Lugosi in a bad mood.
My grandmother used to say the ocean is the one place that still keeps its secrets. She grew up in Nova Scotia, so she said it the way you'd say something you learned the hard way.
The Mary Celeste sailed on after all this, as ships do. Different owners, different names for a while. She ran aground off Haiti in 1884. Some people think that was deliberate, an insurance scheme by her then owner, who'd had enough bad luck with her. Maybe she was just a ship that used up all her fortune in one go, on one November crossing. There are things in this world that feel that way.
A ship that spent everything she had.
The ocean has kept 10 people for 153 years now. We've sent probes to Mars in that time. We've mapped the human genome. We carry little computers in our pockets that would look like sorcery to Benjamin Briggs, and we still don't know what he saw that made him leave a perfectly good ship with his wife and his baby girl and get into a much smaller boat. Maybe we never will. And maybe that's the honest ending.
I think what I'll carry from this one is Sophia. 2 years old, on her first ocean adventure, she never got to grow up and tell anyone what she saw. And that's the part that makes me want to hold on to something warm tonight.
There's a lesson somewhere in all this about the difference between confidence and certainty. Captain Briggs was confident, rightly so. He knew ships, he knew the sea. But the sea doesn't care about your credentials. The wilderness never does. Some thresholds, once you cross them, don't lead back. And the only honest thing to do is respect that. Respect the people who cross them. Keep the fire going a little longer than you planned.
Sleep warm tonight, friends. And if you're near the water, you don't have to go in. Marty and I will be right here by the fire.
Right here by the fire, with hot coffee and absolutely no plans to cross the North Atlantic in November. I'm Marty Shepherd.